We go. Welcome to another episode of BetaTalk. Happy New Year! So I'm recording this. We're still in December. I'm recording this in December, but this will go out in the new year, and it will go out with my new sponsor, who is Primary Pro. Now I've had a little bit of. I've got a fantastic guest on for you guys, by the way. Some of you are going to know him, Mick Wall. But I've had a lovely little bit of serendipity happen this morning. So Mick, being the wonderful, beautiful geek he is, and we'll talk about that in a minute. He uh, he sent me a Google document uh, about what we should discuss during the show, and me being completely unorganised, that's not how I do my shows. But I thought, well, I'll look for it this morning, so I looked for it, and in my emails, I typed in his name and searched for emails, and I found some old emails, and I found one from it was in back in 2022 in August. And I'm going to read it out because there's a lovely bit of serendipity. Hi, Nathan. Enjoyed the pipe lagging chat with Dave. Now, Dave is the sponsor. He's going to be, this is the first episode of this new season where we're being sponsored by Primary Pro. Primary Pro is an outside lagging system that all the best engineers in the UK are now using. So it's a fantastic thing. Now, I'm going to read a bit more of this email because it's funny. Enjoyed the pipe lagging chat with Dave. Strange that I find such topics interesting now, becoming a plumbing geek. And we're going to talk about this because Mick has become, he knows more about heating than most of the engineers I know. And he goes on, in recent episodes, I've noticed you just jump straight into the chat with folks. Now, this is fine if the listener knows the people on the podcast, but I would imagine the vast majority of people listening don't know who these people are. Many of the other podcasts I listen to solve this problem with the following format. Before the chat starts, you introduce the guests, name, company, etc., and then you ask them to give a brief introduction. So already back in 2022, Mick Blessing was telling me how to introduce my guests. So I'm going to let him introduce himself, and I'm going to just sit back here for the next hour and enjoy his conversation. Mick, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. I've been trying to get you on for ages and ages. Really, really good to get you on, and we've got lots and lots to talk about. Go for it.
Thanks. Thank you, Nathan. Yes, and Happy New Year, even though it is the middle of December and the Christmas decorations have only just gone up. Um, my name's Mick Wall. I am a heating nerd. I didn't always used to be a heating nerd. I blame solar PV for that. For those that don't know, I run the Energy Stats website. So my journey started around 6 years ago when I had solar PV installed, just before the end of the feed-in tariff. And since that point, that was like solar PV was like the gateway drug to renewables for me. Uh, I've sort of gone on this full renewable journey since then. Batteries, mixes your water cylinder, uh, EV, heat pump. We've got rid of the gas cooker. We're fully electric now. The gas meter's gone. Octopus took that away for free, so fully electric house now. Got into uh, sort of time of use electric tariffs, which sort of created the website that I created sort of 5 or 6 years ago, all based around Octopus's tariffs. So we'll talk about time of use tariffs and how they can benefit later.
Yeah.
Uh, and none of this is my real job. I'm just an IT nerd by trade. Sort of 30 years in IT. I currently work at the University of Sheffield, uh, looking after big storage and server systems for them. Uh, but yeah, the way I'm wired is I need to know how things work. Uh, I was really lucky on my journey that I fell into energy Twitter where I found you and I found Damon. Luckily, he's in Sheffield as well. Uh, and yeah, uh, through Damon, he's come along on the journey with me, and it's been fantastic. I only live in a 1930s semi, 3 bedrooms. There's four of us, two adults, two teenagers. We're really like typical house, nothing fancy about it. We've got high water demand. It's not like a show house or anything. So the stats I put out on my site sort of started as just displaying tariff information, and has now morphed into like a blog of the renewable journey. Every month I'm putting up solar stats, how my heat pump's performing, how to get the best out of it. So I'm trying to help people, and it's all real world stuff. I don't preach. Well, I hope I don't preach. I just say, here are the stats. If you find them useful, here you go. The real world to me, there are family stats. Good luck, and on you go.
I
So
think people.
how's that for
That was brilliant.
an opener?
That was brilliant, Mick. And I should explain to my listeners, ironically, I mean, as you just heard, Mick is in IT. That's his skill set. Just before we came online to record this, the internet went down my end, and my camera has stopped working on my screen, so he can't actually see me. I can see him. He might
I've seen him loads of times. So
have.
we've met a few times at Installer Show. Yeah, this is how nerdy I've got. From IT gig, I've started going to Installer Show in Birmingham and meeting up with all the plumbers and the shouldn't call them plumbers, heating engineers and other nerds. And we have a good chin wag down in Birmingham. So yeah,
Well,
that's that.
you mentioned the resource you use, which is fantastic because obviously it's coming from a perspective of a homeowner, a consumer. So you've got nothing to sell, so you're just giving people information, real world information that's really honest, really really great. I mean, there's going to be heating engineers learning from that information. Trust me. Now, what I want to ask you is, had you ever thought about the heating industry previously? I mean, had you ever thought about the people that work in the heating industry? Because you obviously know quite a lot of good people now in this industry. I mean, so what's your view about our industry?
My view pre solar and pre this journey was we had our combi replaced, and I just rang a couple of local people. It was the existing one had broken down. They came and they said, "There's this Valent one, or there's this other. I can't remember what the other option was. Uh, this one's 28 kilowatts. This one's 32." And they said, "You might as well go for the bigger one because it's the same price." And they put it in and out in a day. We were back up and running. The kids were really young back then, so obviously that was really important. It was like February or something. It had broke, so that distressed purchase. Just get it working. We need it working. I knew nothing about kilowatts. Before solar, before this journey, I didn't know what a kilowatt hour was. I just paid the bill like everyone else. So to me, heating engineers were just the guys that come and swap your combi out, and I knew nothing else. Obviously now, knowing what I know about design and pipe sizing and flow rates and pressure drops and everything else, the science of heat, as you always describe it, is there's a massive difference in the education gap between the guys that came and swapped out that combi that sort of 7 or 8 years ago for me, and the guys like Damon and all the other heat geeks and the rest of the guys that go on the Kimbo training that are putting in heating systems now. It's it's night and day.
Mm, mm. Yeah, I mean, you mentioned that you had Damon. So for my listeners, some of my listeners will know who Damon Blakemore is, and he's a wonderful one. I love him. I absolutely love the guy. He's obviously a younger gentleman than me. He's got 4 kids, 4 girls, so he's a family man, and he absolutely is rocking it. He's so passionate about learning, and that this is the guy that put mixed system in. I mean, I just
Yeah,
want to say.
yeah.
There's one thing I want to say, I mean, because obviously as we transition, there's some fantastic engineers out there who are very, very good at getting people's boilers going. They don't know the science of heat, but they haven't been trained in it. They've been trained to safely install equipment, etc. And if it's late at night, you've got young kids or you're elderly and your boiler's broken down, you want someone to come around who
Oh, absolutely.
knows how to fix that. And so I always
Absolutely.
feel sorry for them ones that them engineers because but as you know, some of them are now thinking, oh, because things like your blog help. That there are
Yeah, yeah.
engineers
Oh,
looking
don't
at.
get me wrong. Those guys that came and swapped out that combi and got a brand new one and got me up and running in a day when I got 2 young kids, it's invaluable.
Yeah.
You always preach that you need those skills, and absolutely those skills have to be there. But when I suppose there's a difference between a distressed purchase and the skills to deal with that immediate need, and the skills to design a system over a period of time and put that in. Because what the to be to describe the period of time that me and Damon put our system in was probably 2 years. We started. I got Damon round to swap a couple of radiators. He doesn't know this, just to check him out to see what he was like. And I thought, oh, he's actually all right. And then we got chatting, and we sort of came up with this move from combi, low temp combi. We were sizing our rads to lower our flow temp on the combi. It was set at 70. This is how funny. This is the progression. My combi was set at 70-degree flow with something like 60-degree water for the water side. So we started a progression of, as we went round the house, replacing radiators. We decorated a room. We replaced a radiator. We did the bathroom and replaced a radiator. But we sized them. We designed it and sized it for 40 degrees as we went along.
Mm.
So over a winter or two, we almost got ourselves heat pump ready, but with the combi. We put the water cylinder in and went electric for a while with the water cylinder, but kept the combi for just heat. And it was like over a period of time that we did this, which sort of was good in a way that you could stage it and you didn't have to pay for it all up front. And then the boiler upgrade scheme came, which then meant we could deal with the heat pump and get the grant for that big piece of work. So that was really good.
It's interesting what you said there. So Andrew Sissons, has just written a great. He writes brilliantly. He works at Nesta, and he's just written a great post about how transitioning to heat pumps may be a step change, so people can do incremental bits. And I was consultant for Nesta back in the day, and was the one that sort of told them about all this low temperature. And funnily enough, when I was looking at your emails, when you started to write blogs, you got me to look over one of your first blogs about this low temperature thing. And I got, Michael Leebright was very interested in what I was saying about low temp. And funny enough, him and Guy Newey just did a bit of a post about that over on Blue Sky. So I was telling people, if people, obviously lots of people can't afford a heat pump straight away, but they can do these incremental steps, maybe like have a weather compensated boiler system, maybe change a couple of rads to see, how low we can get that compensation and modulation down.
Absolutely.
Because a transition isn't always one great leap from A to B. Sometimes you got to get to B. Talk about this. I want you to talk about this energy because you become quite super famous. You get invited I think you were invited abroad by Octopus. You went to something going on abroad the other day, didn't you? And you get
Yeah,
invited.
in September we I got invited to Octopus had in association with Wired magazine had a tech summit in Berlin, where there were over the course of the day there was a load of really important speakers talking about the energy transition and electric vehicles and all sorts of topics. I can't remember all the topics, but Octopus Energy wanted to do like a promotional thing where to prove that they could take a bunch of EVs from the UK and drive them to Berlin and back just to prove they could. And I got invited along onto that. So we met up in Folkestone on the Monday, and we drove all through France, Holland, Belgium, Germany, got to Berlin sort of midnight on Wednesday night for this. Spent all day at this tech summit, met a load of great people at Octopus and lots of other energy sort of people. Some of you've had on the podcast before. Nigel was there, Nigel Banks, and a few others. So it was a long way to go to meet loads of faces that I'd heard, to put voices to sort of face. It was really weird. And I've got people coming up to me going, I am Mick, and I'm like, who are you? But then I was with Phil Steele,
Yeah.
from Octopus, and he had to get back to the Fully Charged show live at Farnborough for Saturday morning. So me and him jumped in this EV VW Buzz van at 7 o'clock on Friday morning in Berlin, and we got to Calais at 9 o'clock at night. We just drove it all the way through. So stopping like every couple of hours to charge. Obviously, we're men of a certain age, so we need to stop anyway. So, so yeah, charge up, do what you need to do, grab something to eat, back on the road. Yeah, and we got back to the UK for like 9 o'clock at night or something. So yeah, it can be done. The charging infrastructure across Europe is fantastic. Weirdly, not so many EVs, but an amazing charging infrastructure, which seems to be the opposite way around in this country. Anyway, so yeah,
you've got a real good insight into sort of Octopus and the them as a energy provider. And just tell us about what your energy stat. Why did you start this site called Energy Stats? What does it do, and how has it progressed?
okay. So I got solar, and when you get solar, you start to have an appreciation for when you start using energy, and when's a good time, when's a bad time, and then you get to realize what a kilowatt hour is, and how many you generate a day, and how many you use, and how many you import, and how many you export, and it's like a light bulb moment. So then you start looking around, am I actually on the cheapest tariff, and how much am I paying per kilowatt hour? So you start looking around, you British Gas and your Eons and whatever. And Octopus was a bit of a startup back then, like 5 or 6 years ago. And they're primarily they're primarily a software. They started off as a software company. So British Gas and you incumbent, your old energy providers are all old school companies that are having to adapt their software as they go along. Whereas Octopus have come to it as a software company and then bolted energy onto the platform. So they've been at the forefront of sort of software right from the start. So the unique thing that they've done is they've allowed anyone like me or you to get access to their pricing data through a computer. And they do this by a thing called an API. And an API is just a way of two computers talking to each other. It's an application program interface. So me as a computer nerd, I can say to Octopus, tell me what the price is tomorrow for this tariff, and it'll just give me a list of prices. So that obviously appealed to me. So I started pulling all this data onto my computer, and I thought, well, I find that really useful. I wonder if other people would find that useful. Because Octopus, about 5-6 years ago, started this tariff called Agile. As you probably know, most tariffs are just fixed. You pay one unit rate for the whole 24 hours. So say it's currently 24p per kilowatt hour. If you use a kilowatt hour at 1 o'clock in the morning, it's 24p. And if you use a kilowatt hour at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, it's 24p. But Octopus brought out this tariff called Agile, that if you've got a smart meter, the price changes every 30 minutes, which is derived from the wholesale price of energy that they have to purchase at that time. So it's more expensive between 4 o'clock and 7 o'clock in the afternoon, much cheaper overnight when no one needs it, sort of demand-based sort of tariff. So you can pull all that information through this API. So I had all this data for my region, Yorkshire. Then I started pulling, there's 14 regions around the UK. I started pulling it for every region. I then started pulling it for every day. And then I started pulling it like back in time. And I had all this data and I didn't know what to do with it. So I created the Energy Stats website and started putting graphs on there, thinking, I wonder if anyone cares about this stuff. It was just a bit of a hobby thing. Turns out people really love it.
Yeah.
People just love graphs, loves data. Uh, and then I started adding the other Octopus tariffs. They've got Go and Intelligent Go for electric vehicles. They've got the Cozy tariff for heat pumps. They've got the Flux tariff for batteries. They've got also like they've got various time of use tariffs for different uh, applications. And all the time of use tariff is having different peaks and troughs at different times of the day to suit the need of the homeowner. If you think about the old Economy 7
Yeah.
tariff, where you had a cheap period overnight and it was more expensive in the day, and it was for people with like storage heaters.
Yeah.
So they'd fill up the storage heaters overnight in the cheap period when there was less demand, and then they tried to avoid using them in the day. And that's all time of use tariffs are.
Yeah.
They're just trying to get you to shift your usage to when there's more renewables on the grid, and the grid is cleaner. And that's all time of use tariffs are trying to do, is just to shift your usage around.
Mm.
Uh, and most of them try and get you to avoid 4 p.m. till 7 p.m. because that's when everyone comes home and puts the oven on, puts everything on, and the grid gets, air quotes, dirty at that time. Now, I know you messaged me the other day going, we must talk about when Agile hit £1 per kilowatt the other day,
Mm.
and it did. So early December, for those who didn't know, the wholesale price of electricity absolutely rocketed for a couple of days when it was still, there was no wind, there was no solar, it was cold, so there was a high sort of heat demand, and Energy Twitter went a bit mad about it. Look how expensive it is. But then we're sat here 2 days later, and yesterday was there was a maximum wind generation on the UK grid at 22,000 megawatts. So in like 2 or 3 days, we've gone from no wind, completely still, really expensive, and then 3 days later, 2 or 3 days later, there's more wind than we know what to do with. They're having to turn wind farms off, and the price of wholesale electric is like pennies.
Mm.
But that's renewables. These are the swings that you have to, the peaks and the troughs, and that you have to sort of get around now with time use tariffs and battery storage, and getting people to charge their cars when we've got all this wind, and try and direct them not to charge them when we haven't got much wind. And that's a thing for the future, this orchestration of matching the generation to the usage, which is going to be an interesting thing to play out in future years.
You've coined a term called the Holy Trinity. Have I got that right? You coined.
Yeah, the holy, yeah, that's the Holy Trinity. That's what I coined it, and Damon pinched it, but we won't talk about that. So the Holy Trinity to me is solar, batteries, and a heat pump. So for in my situation, I've had my heat pump now. I've got a 5 kilowatt heat pump, a Valent Aerotherm. I've got 5 kilowatt, 5.1 kilowatt of solar on the roof. I've got 16 kilowatt hour of batteries, and I'm able to almost run the heat pump for about 7 months of the year off that combination, which is why I call it the Holy Trinity. If you've already got solar and batteries, and you're still running a gas boiler, you're missing a trick, because the heat pump can run off the solar and the batteries for most of the year. And then on top of that, if you've then got time of use tariffs where you can fill those batteries up in like autumn and winter on the cheaper overnight rates, then it's just like this amazing package. So rather than thinking about, I'm paying every unit of electricity is 24p, you think of it more of like what you could class it as like a blended rate. What is the average rate that I've imported at?
Mm.
by using batteries and using my EV and using all these things that are available to me to be able to make the best of, because you've paid for these things. You've paid for your EV, you've paid for your charger, you've paid for your solar, you've paid for your battery. So how can I get the very best out of this? So as an example, across the last 12 months, my average import rate of electricity was 9.5 pence per kilowatt hour, compared to what's the price cap at the moment, 24p. So
Mm.
by using solar, batteries, heat pump, I've slashed the the price of what I pay just by making use of all that stuff I've got. Now, I know someone's going to be screaming, yeah, but how much did it all cost? And
Yes.
yeah, of course, the kit's not cheap. And I've chosen to invest in the house in that way. I don't drink, don't smoke. What do you do?
That's a reference to Adamant, if anyone remembers.
I've just given away my age, Anta.
I should imagine we've put heat pump systems into the recording studios that Adam would have recorded in. Well, you mentioned this thing about costs, and that's just made me think of something. I mean, you've got a lot of social proof about what your house can do now. Yeah, it's on the internet. You've got your blog. You've got your data. People know who you are. If you were to sell your house, I mean, are we at the stage in society where well, I don't know much about buying and selling houses, but where your house would be seen as quite valuable because it's got this system in it where whoever moves in is going to have very cheap, comfortable heating and electric. I mean, are we at a stage in society yet where that's a thing or going to be a thing?
You'd hope so, but I suppose the person coming in would would they value would they personally value that kit? I don't know.
I mean, that's obviously somewhere where an estate agent who's showing the person around the house could really go into it, yeah, because they're trying to make a sale because they get commission. They get a lot of commission, I've been told.
Yeah, yeah.
But if you were someone of that demographic, who's quite interested in saving energy and this kind of thing, your house would be a perfect house for them to buy, because it's not only a lot of people are going to walk into homes that have got this technology, but no one knows if it's working properly. Let's put it that way. We do with yours. I mean, it's completely documented all over the internet how well your
Yeah,
system.
yeah, yeah. It has to. Yeah, it's like a. I'm almost putting it up there to oh, what's the term? I'm sort of like
Yeah, I
for
know
my
it.
own. Yeah, it's like self
It's a justification.
regulation sort of thing.
Now you mentioned, I just want to, before I forget, you mentioned API, and this is what started your journey with the Octopus
Yes.
thing. Do other energy providers that are sort of doing your tariffs and tariff bundles, do they have an API system which people can tap
No,
in?
nowhere near as not that I'm aware of. Uh, some may. I've decided not to go chasing other APIs. I like the site as it is. It's already complicated enough, and I'm sure there are some other uh,
So I think,
suppliers that have got APIs.
right.
And the funny thing is, there's some suppliers that are now using Octopus's software because Octopus resell their underlying software to other suppliers because it's
Oh,
that good.
Kraken. We're talking about
Yeah,
Kraken, aren't we? Well, that's
yeah.
their main. I should imagine that's their main revenue.
Revenue stream. Yeah, yeah.
Which is why, and this obviously is something people contact me a lot about. Is it's how come Nathan SMEs are charging so much to put heat pump systems in, when Octopus can do it so cheaply? And I say, well, they Octopus have other revenue streams. SMEs don't have other, someone like Damon
Yeah,
hasn't
yeah.
got another revenue stream. He has to charge what he has to charge. We often say it's a NOS leader, and there's nothing wrong with Octopus doing that. They've scaled up heat pump installations. They've made great roads with creating awareness around heat pumps. So good for them for that. But yeah, they're going to be able to install it cheaper than an SME. What on this journey? So you mentioned you work at the university, Sheffield University. So your peers, your mates at work, and you know, who obviously must know what you do. You become sort of this sort of famous homeowner with all this technology. Have they been inspired to have heat pumps? Has that started to happen yet? You know, people have thought, oh, Mick's got one, I'll have one.
Uh, they they always ask me now about we have this conversation in the office about controls, and whenever anyone mentions a Tado, I sort of leap up like a meerkat and go, no, no, don't get a Tado. uh, it's just that I just go, it's an on-off controller. Uh, so yeah, we have. I try and educate them about. One of the guys in the office was needed a new boiler. He's got a system boiler, and I said to him, "Right, here's this. This is the list that you need. You need weather comp. You need priority domestic hot water setting. This is there your main two things. So whatever you're going to go and talk to, get those things." And he went, "Okay." And I explained what they were and why you needed them.
Mm,
So he went out and got quotes. And in the end, he ended up with British Gas coming round and putting him in a non-weather comped single flow rate system. And I think they put Tado on it.
mm.
And I said, "What happened?" He went, "I could not find any installer that understood what you were asking me to ask them."
They put a charge. Did they not put a hive on it?
Oh, so not a hive, sorry.
It's the same. Mm.
So he rang round. No one could get back to him. No one particularly understood priority domestic hot water or uh, weather comp. And obviously don't know who he was talking to, but uh, again, I think that just highlights the challenges. You can go armed with all the knowledge in the world, but finding the expertise, even on the gas side, to be able to put in a good system seems really hard at the moment.
I really don't understand it, Mick. I don't understand how the largest installation companies in our country, you know, now that we've got this big, massive discourse around energy efficiency, you know, what is an efficient heating system? Because the great thing about our industry is, you know, the marketing people have got away with it for ages and ages, especially in the controls industry and the boiler industry. But the thing is about our industry, it's physics. So you once people like yourself, I mean, look how much you know now. You can't dispute some of the stuff like things like how we should push heat into a home and use weather compensation. But you've got the largest boiler installation companies, your British Gas, your Boxed. There's another company, great entrepreneur, I think Warmzilla they're called, and I keep chatting to him about things. I said, look, you guys have got to start putting in stuff with compensation controls. And he was saying, well, it's the cost. I said, come on, look, a combi boiler is not going to cost you any more to put in with weather compensation controls. The other thing is, if they start to do it, they have a great USP because if you're a large installation company putting in these gas boilers and you're weather comping them with an IoT device, smart device like the Hive, you know, they're in 2 million homes, that Hive. Now, you imagine the data, you're a data person, you imagine the data going to a central repository telling you all the weather curves of all these homes. You would know which homes are heat pump ready. You'd know that there's these homes that only need 35-degree flow when it's -3, or this home needs these homes need full. You would know all that information. That is invaluable information. It's not hard for them to do. They're massive installation companies, these companies, and they're just not doing it. They're just chucking stuff in with on-off control, which breaks boilers quicker. So that's not environmentally friendly. I don't understand why they're just not doing it.
It's, breaking a boiler quick is good for them, though, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's maybe what it.
But you're going back to your data point. Yeah, you're absolutely right. If you can paint a picture that at -3 they need 52 flow, and when it's 10 degrees outside they only need 46 or something. You've got a picture there that what that house needs. It's invaluable data, but they probably don't see it like that, do they?
Well, I've
What's
told
going to
them.
happen is someone's going to ring them and say, "I've heard about these heat pumps." And then someone's going to go around and do uh, a heat loss survey. That'll be bloody oversized and and they end up with twice as big a heat pump as they need. But they could have had the raw data there and there to uh, corroborate the sizing.
I mean, it just really confuses me. I mean, I've told British Gas a lot. I've told Hive a lot. I mean, if you go into the main offices at British Gas, I mean, I don't know what I'm allowed to say here. But you go into the toilets, the men's toilets, and there's posters everywhere talking about AI, artificial intelligence, and how it's going to sort of be a great, great thing. And I think, crikey, if you were running AI over all this data that you could potentially get, you could work out what archetypes around the country are more likely to have had radiators replaced over time to be able to have lower temperatures. You could garner some amazing information. It's not bloody hard to do. I
You
mean,
could you could you could almost use that data if you over a space of a year, 18 months, if you you could almost like create like a league table and find the ones that have been running
yeah.
at like really low temps and almost say you could just about get a heat pump for next to nothing
Mm,
because by the looks of it, there's not going to be much you're going to need to change to run it like 45
mm.
flow at -3. But then the ones that like look like the 20 degrees indoors and they're still running at 70, then that's a red flag that there is going to be some major work required, perhaps.
Yep.
So they could use it to their advantage, like a no brainer, really.
Being a software guy yourself, then, so obviously there's these 2 million hives in homes that obviously haven't got open therm, can't talk to the boiler. I mean, I don't know a lot about coding. I mean, is there something that could be done to those smart devices where it could have open therm, and then it obviously would take someone to go round and just wire it up to the boiler to the open therm terminals? I mean, or would it have to be a
I
new?
don't know. I don't think I'm not sure Hive's even got that in it. I think it's just a two wire on off. I
Well,
don't know.
apparently Hive is changing for heat pumps. Apparently for the heat pumps, they want it
Oh
to be
God.
and I've been told it's going to be great. And
I share your concern when you talk to Glyn and Trystan last in the last one of the last episodes about controls and heat pumps.
Mm.
Don't go there.
Well, funnily enough, since I've had that episode published, a very well-known controls manufacturers contacted me. Really nice conversation. Great guy from the technical department chatting to me. They're sort of more well known for the underfloor heating industry, but they understood what I was saying and they want to move in that direction. And so I gave them a lot of advice, as I give everyone lots of advice, and they nicely said, "Oh, we'll have to take you out for dinner." uh, Brilliant. Um, but yeah, no, well, that's good if the controls industry are listening. I mean,
Yeah, absolutely.
they've had it
But
good for years.
my Valent has been running on the Valent control since day one. My Valent heat pump,
Great
and
controls.
it's just as long as you've got that heat curve dialed in right, it just runs like a dream. It's just really good. Efficiency's been fantastic. Like I said, 1930s semi. Uh, I, the first year we were bedding in, I got a yearly SCOP at 3.75.
Yeah.
Uh, I think I ran it a bit too hot that first year. Even I was a bit fearful. Like I said to the wife, we weren't going to be cold, so I'd knocked it up a bit, the internal temp a bit higher than I probably should have, and we were running the hot water a lot higher than I probably should have. Then the second year, 4.2, so not so a pretty good improvement in that second year. Uh, and then this third year, we're on track to beat that. But it's been like a constant evolution. We, we've swapped a couple of radiators as we've redecorated a few more rooms. We've put some insulation in where I've noticed colder rooms and things along the way. So it doesn't stop when the heat pump goes in. It's sort of been a journey before and after. And I think people get a bit hung up on it's all got to be crammed into a week or 2 weeks or whatever. And I don't think it needs to be like that, Nathan.
Mm,
It can be a long journey of
mm.
prep from combi to low temp to get you to a certain place, and then you can put it in, run it a bit higher than probably want to long term, but then over time make some more changes and dial it down a bit more as you go along. As long as you don't oversize it like we see, as
Mm.
long as you're in the right ballpark, then I think you can carry on making changes and getting more efficiency out of it.
If you had your time,
And
if you had your
oh,
time
sorry.
again, if you had your time again, would you be a, obviously, as you know, one of the big challenges we have in this country is we haven't got enough competent engineers. We've got lots of engineers out there, like I say, we've got lots of gas engineers, and hopefully a lot of them are going to get interested in learning and make a transition. But would you be a heat pump? Oh, so, would you be a heating engineer if you had your time again, or would you have gone sort of like the
Eh,
computer way?
I'm useless uh, mechanically. Uh, I can destroy things, but I can't put things back together neatly. I'm hopeless at any sort of physical DIY. I'm definitely more a, a numbers and that sort of side geek. So maybe on the design side.
Yeah.
But you said that I've been asked to do some work with Simon Roberts from Hetio. I'm not sure you know Simon, but looking at like a home energy management system, and to try and pull one of the problems with technology is I've got a Valent heat pump and I've got a Lux battery and a Mixergy cylinder and all these devices from different brands, and none of it really talks to each other. So
Mm.
it's about how can you, and you've got 5 different apps on your phone, and it's like how can you present that to a homeowner in a more seamless way. So we're looking at like designing this like home energy management system to single pane of glass sort of thing where you get all the basic information on one screen, so it's more readily available than digging into lots of different places and stuff. Uh, so that's so yeah. I've I've been using all that knowledge I've sort of gained over the last 5 or 6 years to look at
Haven't they
how we
got a
can.
haven't they got a Hems at the moment? I thought that's what Hetio had.
Yeah, the build, that's what we're building at the moment behind the scenes, and they're also looking at doing like an energy as a service model,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
which goes back to the upfront cost issues we talked about earlier about how do you how do you pay for all this kit that will save you in the long term.
Because
It's all about financing, isn't it?
they've received funding, Hetio, and I
Yeah,
mean
yeah,
people do ask me, what does Hetio actually do? And I think they've had iterations. I think they've sort of changed it. Sometimes I think their business model. I mean, you say, do I know? Yeah, I know Simon well because Simon used. Well, Simon he created Easy MCS,
is
and
the
then that was
MCS,
bought,
yeah,
that was it. That was bought by Evergreen Energy. Evergreen Energy used to sponsor me, so they sponsored one of my first seasons. And Simon worked there. I used to chat with Simon all the time and
yeah,
sort of give them ideas. And obviously, they then bought Homely, so I knew Carolus from the early days. Obviously, Evergreen bought Homely, the heat pump optimizer. So yeah, I know the guys that last time I saw. So I know Nesta very well. So I'm sometimes up at the Nesta offices. I've got passed to get in the Nesta offices. But Simon was there not so long ago. And we bumped into him. But
yeah.
I actually never know what EO were doing, if I'm honest, because uh, I don't. I should do. But there's so many entities now, Mick.
Yeah, all these
I
little
can't
all
keep up with them.
startups looking for.
Yeah.
The thing is, I'll tell you where I think it's all been driven by is there's we talked earlier about grid flexibility, about shifting load around. I think there's going to be rewards to companies who can accrue a, a, a bunch of kit and properties that the grid can find useful. So if you've got a battery and I've got a battery, that's only 2 batteries. And if the grid say, turn your batteries on and help the grid out, send it all back to the grid at 5 o'clock because we need some help. That's only 2 batteries. But if someone like a company that can sign up 1,000 people with 1,000 batteries, and at the push of a button, they can get all 1,000 batteries to send back to the grid. The grid then say, "Thanks very much. That really helped us out.
Yeah.
Here's a few quid." I think that's the driver where all these companies are looking
Yeah.
to make some money, uh, because it makes sense because it's going to help the grid out, and you're going to make use of all these individual items in people's houses that when you put them together, they use the term virtual power plant, and it's true. You combine all these smaller entities to make one bigger entity, and when you switch them all on or switch them all off, or you import, or you when there's tons of wind and you fill them all up, and then when we're lacking on those days when it's really expensive at 4 o'clock to 7 o'clock, you send it all back to the grid. I think that's what we talked about earlier about the future and the peaks and troughs of these tariffs. But there's money to be made in that somewhere along the line. And then you think about the next stages. Uh, uh, a single battery that most people have in their house is 5 kilowatt hours to 15 kilowatt hours, maybe.
Mm.
But then you think that on a lot of people's driveways, there's an EV that's got 50 kilowatt hours to 80 kilowatt hours sat there.
Mm.
So if you can then tap into a 100,000 cars that you can switch on at any one time
Mm.
and harness all that power, both take it off the grid and put it back on the grid when it's required, there's definitely a few quid to be skimmed off the top of that process and money made along the way. And that's where ultimately I think things are going to go. So it's like from a nerdy point of view, that's like really exciting.
Yeah, I had a meeting yesterday with someone from the sort of the finance world, and insurance world, who are very connected to mortgage lenders, etc., etc. And funny enough, they were actually talking about the clean heat market mechanism because they understand. I've kind of been on the fence about it. You know, I'm not clever enough to understand economics, etc. You know, I know that market mechanisms came from America, so I've sat on the fence. But they don't think it'll work. Now that's very interesting for me because so I'm going to get them on the show and we can have a nice little friendly debate with someone like Richard Lowe's who's a big advocate of them. But they're coming from this person is an economist. You know they know all this kind of stuff. But they were talking about this whole thing of flexibility and people being rewarded. I think they were mainly coming from a position of businesses and things like carbon credits, and that they were sort of talking about how it's a different sort of way to the clean heat market mechanism where people can or entities and businesses can get rewarded in some fashion for what they're doing. And it was very interesting. I mean, I can't really say exactly what he said because it'll be coming on the show at some point, I think. But yeah, so you obviously know the people that are really into this because you're one of Octopus's number one sort of that they're your biggest fan base, I should imagine. They love you. Um, so yeah, they're the people that really understand all this, don't they?
Yeah. Well, they've got the you talked about data, that they've got every bit of data about your house you could from an electrical point of view you could ever think of. I think they said they've got 100,000 car EVs linked
Mm.
up, like all the time, that are constantly load shifting. So you come home from work at 5 o'clock and you're on the intelligent octopus tariff, and you plug in at 5 o'clock, your charger will go, "No, you're not charging now. It's expensive. The
Mm.
wholesale market is expensive now. The grid is dirty now. I'll schedule you some slots later when it's cheaper, and by 6 o'clock or whenever you need it the next morning, your car will be charged." So it just does that for you. And they've got 100, I think they said they've got 100,000 cars that they're constantly moving this uh, demand around to meet the pricing signals and everything else. So they've already got an enormous amount of data, uh, to and the tariff that that they're on, this intelligent octopus, is it's 7.5, say it's 7p per kilowatt overnight and 24 pence in the day. So to fill our EV up, which has got a 64 kilowatt hour battery, which gets 300 miles out of that battery, costs £4.48. And what would that be in petrol or diesel?
A lot.
40, 50 quid.
Mm.
So they're doing that for thousands of cars every night. So people are paying a tenth of the price to drive. So if you can charge at home, EVs are so much cheaper to run and so much nicer to drive. Once you've driven one, I don't think you'd ever go back if you had the chance.
I want to
So,
talk about your mixology in a minute, but before I do that, I want to just say, this is what makes us world leaders, because obviously, octopus is a UK thing. So that's the best thing possibly in the world. Understanding all this data, as you know, I'm always inculcating how we've got great engineers. I get very frustrated about this thing with the laggards of Europe. I did a post about it today actually on LinkedIn. We've had the largest commercial heat pump industry in Europe for decades. That's why people like Panasonic come over here and buy up sort of suppliers and stuff like that, because I know the particular supplier they bought up back in 2008. Yeah, we've got a massive, massive commercial heat pump industry. People call them air conditioners, but they're heating you as well. Everywhere you go, they're everywhere. Every petrol station you walk into is getting heated by what you would call an air conditioner, what people call an air conditioner, but it's a heat pump system. And these same heat pump systems get counted out in Finland when they go into people's properties, and they're the top of the league table. We're at the bottom in domestic, supposedly. But yeah, we've got this great engineering history of this country, and we've now got this octopus. Octopus. I like what they're doing. I don't think they understand. I think they keep me at arm's length. Some of them. A lot of them listen to my podcast, so I really value that. And thank you so much for doing that. But you know, what they're doing is fantastic around all this data and the flexibility, and we must be the world leaders on this because
yeah,
because
they have expanded into lots of countries around Europe. I know they're
yeah.
trying to get into Germany. They've just released a heat pump tariff and a EV tariff in Germany. Uh, they're in Spain. They've got some presence in Australia, I think. Uh, Texas, I think they're in as well in America. So yeah, they're expanding all over the place, taking this same underlying software and trying to take this flexibility and because I suppose it's like a lift and shift. Once you've written the code, it's sort of can just hopefully apply it to another market and I suppose it's regulations and how different countries do different things. So
Yeah, I suppose there's the
uh,
concern of a monopoly as well. That no one really wants one entity controlling all this power and energy across the whole.
no, but I suppose it's for the British gases and the other companies to up their game and and get involved into it. It's and whilst okay, I'm a massive Octopus fan from the tariff point of view and the API point of view, but it's like fair play to them, isn't it? They've innovated, they've come in, they've proved what can be done, and it's up to the others to catch up or fail,
Now, you didn't
really.
have an octopus heat pump install though, did
Oh
you?
no, no, no. I did inquire about it. They were too early in their journey to accommodate me. Uh, they were just about to start putting Dakins in when I spoke to them. Uh,
Yeah.
so funnily enough, when I was in Berlin and I got to talk to Greg Jackson for a little bit, he did say his colleague said, uh, has he got one of our heat pumps, Greg? And he went, no. He says he bloody should have had one though. And I was like, "No, I've got a Damon Blackmore heat pump."
Damon Blake.
Don't get me wrong, I'd have loved to have seen one of those new ones. Well, I'm not sure I like the look of it, but from a data point of view, I'd have loved to have got Open Energy Monitor on it and got all the data out of it. So I've got Open Energy Monitor on mine, and it's like an obsession. So what Glyn and Trystan have done with that the episode you spoke to them was like gold dust to me. It was
Yeah.
fantastic.
You've got a Damon Blakemore. So he's one of my what I used to call heat beta talk heat architects. So
Yeah.
he's one of my favourite engineers in the country. So that might put value on your house again. That you've got a Damon Blakemore beta talk heat architect installed.
Well, yeah. Well, hopefully these referrals I keep sending his way will keep me sweet.
So
So
the Mixergy, so you had a Mixergy, didn't you? Now, obviously, when everyone sort of got to know you, all us engineers got to know you, and all the good work you were doing on well, it was Twitter we all used back then, wasn't it? Yeah, you had this Mixergy. I know a lot of engineers. We were a bit umming and ahhing about it. I know the Mixergy team quite well. Lovely, lovely people. You still got it on your system, have you? And does it?
absolutely, yeah,
Yep,
it's
yep,
fantastic.
yep.
So yeah, there was a rocky sort of journey with it. So the reason why we put it in, I alluded earlier to the fact that we stopped using the combi for hot water, and I spent a summer using the Mixergy for hot water just on electric. So, uh, which is a weird way to go about it, but the logic that Damon and I came up with was I could I could charge it overnight on direct electric on the cheaper tariff, which made it cheaper than gas. So even on an immersion where it's 1-to-1 electric,
Yeah.
it was still cheaper than gas. Uh, but well, it was about equal with gas, I think, at the time. But the biggest bonus was because I got the solar, I could divert any surplus solar to the Mixergy in the day and heat the tank while I was at work using the My Energy Eddy solar diverter. So this is a thing going back to electricity and solar and time of use tariffs. Is electricity is like so flexible. You don't get this with gas. It sort of gas is
Mm.
one price from one source. That's it. Electricity, you've got. Can you use your solar? Can you use time of use tariffs? Is it cheaper then? Is it more expensive then? So you've got all this flexibility of what you can do with it. So
Mm.
for me, I could charge it up overnight. We could have showers in the morning. And then while we were at work, the surplus solar could fill it back up. And we did that for the whole summer. And the amount of money I saved was phenomenal because I was just using the solar to heat the cylinder up.
Mm.
And then come October, when we put the heat pump in, the Mixergy had a plate exchange add-on that you put onto the side of the cylinder, which made it heat pump ready. And
Mm.
then the Valent could use the heat pump. The, the heat pump could heat the hot water in the Mixergy. So the beauty of the Mixergy is it's great for being on a journey because it can heat from a variety of sources. It can still heat from if you get the uh, indirect version, you can still heat it from gas. You can heat it through the immersion element. You can heat it from a heat pump. So it's got lots of different ways that you can use it if you're still on a journey, sort of thing, rather than it just being, just having one use.
Mm.
Uh, and yes, there was some early issues with perceived performance from the heat pump. Uh, that turned out to be me. The way I was trying to uh, I was throwing the full amount of heat from the heat pump to the cylinder. Uh, and as it turns out, that's not the best way to heat water with a heat pump. The best way to heat water with a heat pump is to run on a sort of lower compressor mode, a lower heat output mode, which takes a bit longer, but you get the way better performance. And that's the way that most heat geeks and most good installers now uh, set up their systems for hot water. And again, if it wasn't for Open Energy Monitor, we wouldn't have any of this data and we wouldn't be able
Yeah. Yeah.
to do all this. So again,
Yeah.
big tip of the hat to
Yeah.
Glyn and Trystan for that. So uh,
They should have won an award by now, Mick. I mean, we've got so many awards in this industry now. There's too many. It's ridiculous. They're run by marketing departments and PR departments, and you literally, people won't like me saying this, but literally, sometimes people are paying for awards because they're big
yeah,
sponsors. They're big sponsors in the magazines, all this kind of stuff. And
yeah.
I'm
So
qualified to say that because I've been in the industry longer than most of the marketers. But someone
so
like you,
I was on a forum the other just last weekend, and someone was saying, should I get a mixergy with the heat pumps? And then a few engineers were going, there's still some negativity around it. It was saying, oh no, it's suboptimal, and I replied like, why? Like I've got a cop, a seasonal coefficient on hot water only of 3.7 in 2024 on hot water only, which
mm,
is which is a whole cop more than the whole trial got in that 2.8 trial for
yeah,
heating. So it's not suboptimal when you use it right. So
it's
again,
de it's definitely an interesting topic. 'Cause, I mean, you'll know Peter Miller. I mean, he's on Twitter as Peter Easton.
yes,
Peter lives near me. He's another vet like yourself, a computer nerd, big time. I mean, I think he did his when he was a young lad. He was working in one of the first computer shops in this country, in Manchester, and I think he studied under one of the world's famous computer people in Manchester. But he had a Mixergy with his heat pump system, and I think he then took it out. But maybe that was to test other
yeah.
strategies.
I've seen his some of his photos, and he's got three heat pumps and four cylinders don't go at once. So yeah,
Yeah.
perhaps it was more in from a testing point of view. But
Mm.
yeah, I'm delighted with mine. I love it. It's got a great app, uh, and yeah, the performance is up there with other high performance cylinders or whatever people are branding other cylinders as. I know there's not much you can sort of do with a cylinder, but it's yeah, there are better ones than others, and the Mixergy is up there.
I mean, there's a new sort of cylinder player on the market. I know them quite well. So they're being made with different stainless steel. I'm not up on my stainless steel. My brother is a stainless steel fabricator and has made very large steel vessels for donkey's years. So I'll check with him if
I
what
think there's only so much you can get out of a cylinder, though, isn't it?
yeah. Oh yeah.
There's only so much surface area that the coil can touch the water that it has to heat,
Oh yeah.
and there's only so big a coil you can get in a cylinder. And I know Adam and Liam from Custom Renewals have helped design that super cylinder, the heat geek super cylinder with Newark, and they'll have gone through all this, and there's only so much you can do.
The interesting
It's a
thing with
surface area thing, and the Mixergy, when I compare Mixergy runs to their runs and stuff, it's up there. It's so there's not a performance issue with the Mixergy. And so it's
The
fine.
interesting thing with cylinders, it's been manufacturing over the years. So obviously, I mean, funny enough, I put a cylinder in for my brother years ago, and within about 2 years, it was leaking. And he had a little look at it. He said, Who welded this?" Because he can weld. He doesn't like being called a welder. He's a fabricator, but he's worked with some extremely good welders. He can weld stainless steel, but
Don't
he
get me wrong though, there are some when we look at the stats again on Open Energy Monitor, some of the poorer cylinders do perform poorly, and it is down to the cylinder. So your choice of cylinder is a
yeah,
is a choice.
it's how long they're going to last as well. So because manufacturing changed. I mean, I grew up in near Norwich, which is famous for the Megaflows heat trace Audi, and I used to know some of the welders there. You know, they were brilliant welders. And then it all changed. You know, the assembly line changed to sort of robotics, sort of tack welding, all this kind of stuff, whatever it does. So how things get manufactured it's going to come down to sometimes how things get manufactured as we progress into this sort of sustainable world, because it's no good if we put in kit in that's really high performing but it only lasts for 8, 9, 10 years. You want it to last for a long long time. So that's going to be interesting as well to sort of study over a length of time, what kit is lasting.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting. Yeah, because if you remember, I we found an issue with the Valent with my Valent heat pump.
Mm.
Uh, so we again due to open energy money, I think I need to be on commission for Glenn and Trystan, but we we discovered that on the older uh, some of the older versions of the Valent, the earlier installs, the firmware, the software that runs on the Valent has a little bit of a bug that does it cycles a bit more than it should
Yeah.
due to some internal counter. It's called energy integral, uh, and the only way uh, to get that fixed is to swap the whole board out on the Valent. I know we had a conversation at install, didn't we, about how unsustainable that is
Yeah.
to to not be able to do over the air updates and fix it that way. So that was a bit frustrating. So you talk about how long things last. Uh, so if your compressor's cycling twice as long as it should due to a software bug, is that going to affect the longevity of the heat pump? Granted, it's going to be under warranty for however many years, 7 years, but still, uh, Valent say it's not an issue, and they wouldn't swap the board out under warranty, so I had to buy it myself and swap it myself and to get it fixed. And I wrote a big article on the website all about it. And if you're really into nerdy things, then that's well worth a read.
I'll put that link because it is well worth the read. Because it was like I say, it's people like yourselves discovering this stuff. Um, apart from the R&D departments for a manufacturer, and they don't tend to be in this country. You guys were discovering something. I mean, you've basically done Valent a big favour and all us a big favour because we don't know this stuff unless it's discovered, do we? Um, and I think it's going to come down to this sustainability as we all sort of learn, what is optimum for an installation design. We're going to we're cracking that nut quickly. It's then going to come down to things like longevity of. I mean, people talk to me about compressors. I think my cousin's still got a heat pump system out there. It's air to air that's running from 1979. I mean, we've just replaced the stuff we did for Dave Gilmour at Pink Floyd. We put that in at 1986. We just replaced that 2 months, 3 months ago. Some of the kit was still work. I mean, the studio hadn't been used for a little while, so everything was shut down. But it looked pretty tatty, but it was still working. So some of
Does
this stuff.
does that get annual service then, Nathan?
Well, it would have.
Does that
It would have done. So basically, after Dave Gilmour owned it, Trevor Horn owned the studio. Trevor Horn is a very famous producer. He owned
yeah,
Sarge.
did Frankie Goes to Hollywood and stuff, didn't he?
Oh, I've got some stories about Frankie. I don't know if I'm allowed to say them. Am I allowed to say them? Oh, let me think what I can. So while Frankie Goes to Hollywood was being recorded, my cousin was actually inside a wall cavity at so there's two studios at Sarm. There's two studios at Sarm, and my cousin's inside a wall cavity, putting some stuff in, cabling or whatever. And Frankie Goes to Hollywood was being recorded. It's actually one of my favourite albums. It's a fantastic album of the
Welcome to the
80s.
Pleasure Dome,
Yeah,
1984, I think.
something like that. And of course, my cousin could hear, and his engineers could hear all this noise, because the band's playing right here, it's getting recorded. Um, and anyway, so the band leaves, and my cousin's still there working, and he gets. Am I allowed to say this? I think so. Uh,
Don't
so
get the podcast struck off. Yeah.
and he gets that because he knows Trevor Horn very, very, very well. My cousin, they've been good friends for a long time, and the band leaves, and Trevor Horn rings up all the session musicians, gets some session musicians round, and they go over what the band had played, and it's session musicians that get recorded on the album. And I'm not sure if people know that, but there you go. It's a fantastic album.
Fun fact, and the Welcome to the Pleasure Dome fun fact is I got it for Christmas in 1984 on cassette.
I'm just going to put a disclaimer in that is just me with a story. I don't know if it's factual or not, so don't anyone come back at me with that. But yeah,
And
so
for,
here we.
and for those younger viewers, cassettes are these.
Yeah. So going back to your question, so yeah, when Trevor Horn owned Hook End Manor, which was probably at the time the world's leading residential recording studio. So a lot of bands would come and stay there to record. It's where Michael Jackson flew into. He was going to record a song there, and then a week later he died. So it's a very famous recording studio. So yeah, we maintained the systems. I say we, my cousin did it. While Trevor had it, someone else had it after that, I think. But then it just went. It wasn't a studio anymore for a good few years. And then some new owners have got it. Lovely young couple. They're a Ukrainian couple. Lovely they are. I think they're sort of late 20s. And they realised this studio is quite world famous. They thought, oh, we'll get it up and running again. And they contacted some AC engineers because they realised it's air to air stuff in the studios and all the different bits and pieces of the studio. Uh, and had some AC companies come round to have a look. And by chance, they called up my cousin. So my cousin went round, obviously knowing the system really well because he put it in. And my cousin says to them, he says, "Oh, do you want to see some extra pieces that you probably haven't seen?" And they were like, "What do you mean?" And he said, "Well, I put this system in," and they absolutely loved it because he's 75, my cousin, and my cousin spent a lot of time in Russia as well. He's probably been to Russia 50 times. He put all the AC systems in, heat pump systems in there in the biggest film studios Russia have got. So he's done a lot of work in Russia, and so he showed them some parts of this studio that they'd never ever seen, and of course he then got the job. And he then said to me, he said, "Well, what do you want to do with the studio? Do you want to make it better? Do you want to make it a better studio?" He said, "Because I know the person that designed that sound desk. It's the same one that they've got in at Abbey Road. My cousin's worked there as well." He said, "I know one of the world's top acoustic architects, so I can get him to come around and sort of look at the studio, see if it can have anything else done." And they were absolutely gobsmacked. So we had a big meeting not so long ago where my cousin sort of had this leading architect come round and the guy that designed that sound desk. And it was amazing for me because they're all looking at my cousin, thinking my cousin's this great. Because my cousin's 75, he's been in the industry so long now, over 4 decades. So he's met all these different musicians, and they're all looking at my cousin as this sort of like this leading expert on studios in this country, which he kind of is from his point of view because he's been in all of them. So it was a lovely little meeting with these lovely people from Ukraine who are going to get this studio up and running again. So I'm really looking forward to sort of watching the bands go there. And we've put the system in again. It's all acoustic sensitive because obviously you can't have a studio where you can hear your AC running. So it all has to
So
get
basically,
tested.
maintenance is a good thing then.
Oh, maintenance is a very good thing. Yeah, yeah. A different type of things though with the air to air stuff, I think. But this is one of the things I think is going to be very interesting. What manufacture? Obviously, you pick companies like your Nebis and your Steve Eltrons, very used to this kind of thing. So they've kind of got their thing down pat. So it's going to be very interesting to see how the newbies in the market, how long their equipment lasts, what they're doing, how they get their service technicians out, et cetera, et cetera, the warranty side of things. So that's kind of what interests me at the moment. I mean, I've obviously got to the point where lots of engineers out there now know what to do to make a very well efficient system. So now it's just a case of right, how well do these manufacturers? Because it's such a competitive market out there for the manufacturers. I mean, obviously you like your Valence. Damon obviously likes Valence. He's obviously got his high performing um, V
Weisman.
Wiesman
Yeah.
system. Does he ever try and convince you to have a Wiesman and get you?
I the V the Wiesman wasn't available when because mine's been in nearly 2.5 years now, and the smaller Weisman wasn't available. Excuse me, back then. But also it comes with a almost like a combi sized box with various bits in it, so it wasn't a good fit for me. Uh, so again, but that's down to the installer and the design and the what can go in there. Because I know Damon puts valence into certain places because that's what will fit in the space he's got. So he's not a one
Yeah.
trick pony, is it?
No.
It's sort of what does the design, what does the heat loss demand, and which is the best unit for that property. They're not just slinging in the same one every time.
If a manufacturer approached you, Mick, and said, "Look, will you put ours in and test it?" Because obviously you're in that world of testing, would you do that or not be bothered now? Because it's
Nah, I think I'm happy now with
yeah.
what I've got. And the wife said to me, "No, please, no more projects." It's sort of so, but I still keep saying there's always another project. Yeah, although I've got to find some project because I'd just be bored stupid if I'm
Well, you're
not
doing your blogs, aren't
researching.
you? You got
Yeah, yeah. I've got about three on the go at the moment writing. I'm trying to write because I know the valence so well now. I'm trying to write more the blogs about various elements of it,
Yep.
like how to help and because the manuals are awful. They send you this big book in 14 languages that tells you nothing. Um, so I'm trying to write some blog articles about summarizing the manuals and also some best practices and things around what to how to get the best out of your system
That
and
sounds
stuff.
interesting. Are you writing them on PDF or can they go on to PDF?
Uh,
Because you chat GPT bot. So I was, there's Renby have just, and Nesta have just issued a chat. So if it's on PDF, and this is all getting technical, but you would understand it, a chat GPT bot can pull it as
can
a
find it
resource.
and yeah.
So,
All
so if
right.
someone was to say, I've got a Vail in front of me, it's this model, this make, what do I do with this particular thing? The chat GPT bot, have I got that right? I'm saying that right.
Yeah.
Tells them what to do because it's extracting information and working out with AI what is
Yeah.
the right information from PDFs.
Well,
Apparently,
you
you have to
say it
do
works it out from AI. All it's doing is basically doing a Google
yes,
search and telling you what it finds, which could be a load of crap. So,
yeah, yeah. I mean, you'll have to speak to the Nesta people about that because obviously, like I think it has to be on PDF.
yeah,
But that's a useful resource, you see, because like you say, the manuals that some of these manufacturers dish out aren't that helpful as a resource.
no,
Whereas what you're doing, what you're doing is fantastic, mate. Be able to provide these resources, and I want to actually admit something here. And I think a few of us engineers, when we all got on Twitter, and I'm at an age where it's all a bit new back then, wasn't it? Social media, and we saw people talking about our industry, and we then start to see consumers talking about industry, and some of us got a little bit frustrated. It was a bit like thinking, well, what do they know about our industry? We've been in it donkey's years. I've been in it all my life, and we got a little bit frustrated, I think, with some of the consumers that were learning, and I got it wrong. We got it wrong because without you geeky homeowners, we wouldn't be halfway down the road to where we are. If you take people like yourself, people like Trystan and Glyn, the
yeah,
amount of information you guys have helped and helped our industry because our own industry, and when I say industry, I'm talking about people like the manufacturers and the marketing people, arguably haven't done a great job for the last few decades. And and the great thing is they can't argue with you people because you people know your physics now. And most marketing people in this industry don't know anything about the physics. They really don't. You ask them what a
no,
watt is, they don't know it's a joule of heat per second. What they do know is how to sell you stuff that perhaps you don't need. And that's a big problem. Marketing in this industry is a big, big, big problem. And I call it out. If I see bullshit marketing, I will call it out and anyone can challenge me on it if they're from that world. But there's going to be
yeah.
some good marketing as well, and this is why people like yourself and Trystan and Glyn have done great, great work, I think. So yeah, I want to just
You just can't argue with real world
yeah,
data, can you?
yeah,
You can have every glossy PDF you want about whatever, but you can't argue with that device is in someone's house and has been there 2 years and has done this, and you just cannot. It is what it is. And okay, some of the you could say, oh well, it's a passive house. No, it isn't. It's come my 1930s semi-detached made out of solid brick is not passive house in any way, shape, or form. It
yeah,
is what it is.
yeah, yeah. Well, on behalf of the industry, on behalf of us engineers, on behalf of consumers, on behalf of manufacturers, I want to thank you because I think you've done a great job. You've got some great resources. And I'm going to remind you of that email you sent me back in 2022, August, because you said I should introduce people properly at the beginning. And then you also said at the end of the podcast, Nathan, you should ask the guests where they can find the guests. So I'm now going to ask you, where can people find all your resources?
Okay. So my website is energy-stats.uk. And on there you'll find all the Octopus energy tariff data for all the 14 UK regions, uh, And also the blog section has got all the information that I've sort of collated around all my heat pump stats over the last 2 years, monthly breakdown, all my solar breakdown of the monthly for the last 6 years, all the Valent information I've sort of collated and around weather curves and reports about my first winter, second winter, all sorts of reports. You could spend hours just reading lots of rambly stuff. You can find me on Twitter and Blue Sky at Zarch1972, which gives away my age. And you can also find energy stats on both Twitter and Blue Sky at Energy Stats UK.
Are you on LinkedIn?
I am, but I
You don't
don't
use it
really.
much.
I've got. I think there's too many socials for one man can only have too many socials. I,
Mick,
I, I have got it, but it's sort of. I think I logged onto it for the first time in about 7 years. I think the last time I used it when I was between jobs, so that was like nearly 8 years ago. So I've not logged on since.
I think you should use it because I prefer that one now. And it's a
Well,
more
because it's
friendly.
more full, because it's more full form rather than sort of
I think
140
so.
characters or whatever.
I think so, and also for networking. So obviously, I'm very, very, very well connected now. But I wouldn't be if it wasn't for social
Oh,
media.
I'm Nathan Gambling. I'm very, very well connected.
I wouldn't be if it wasn't for social media. I mean, if it wasn't for social media, no one would have a bloody clue who I am. But it's done what it was supposed to do, I suppose.
Absolutely, mate.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Mick,
No,
it's been a
and
pleasure.
I'll return the compliment and say thank you for an amazing podcast because I've learned so much from it. And yeah, keep up the fight. Keep on fighting the good fight.
Oh, top man, thank you ever so much for that. Well, you have a great. I know this will be going out after Christmas, but you have a great Christmas. I'll speak to you soon.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks a lot, Nate.